Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Life After DD214. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Bob Lilly. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. So, one thing that people are starting to learn about me is I did ROTC and then I commissioned into the Army. My special guest is one of my instructors while I was in ROTC. So, Bob, thank you so much for gracing me with your presence.
My honor.
So now that everyone's got that little bit of introduction, let's go actually listen to you and see what brought you into the military.
Well, I'm a second generation NCO. I mean, my father was a career soldier, served 33 years. I'm retired as a sergeant major. I was in the Army while he was still in. He was in 3 years during my first 3 years. So again, we are a military family. I think from the time I was 1 year old to the time I was seven, I didn't know anything existed outside the military. Like I didn't know, it never dawned on me that there was such thing as a civilian, if that makes any sense. Grew up in military installations my entire life, been all over the world. And honestly, all I ever thought I would be was a soldier. I mean, really, I just never saw anything else that I wanted to do. I had a one track mind, which is not a good thing, by the way. Don't have a one track mind.
Fair. So I hear you say that you always wanted to be a soldier, but that's not
Yes.
how you started your military career.
So, like everybody else, when you become a teenager, you start to see other stuff and your mind goes all over the place, right? I was in Hawaii at the time, and the Marine Reserve had the only force reconnaissance company in the Marine Corps, as in the Marine Corps Reserve, as much as I knew. And I thought that was really cool. On top of that, my parents weren't ready for me to go on active duty. So I was like, okay, I'll join the Marine Reserve then. Right. So that's kind of what I did. And it was cool. I mean, I went to jump school as a Marine and, being a force recon unit, it was fairly, I don't want to use the word glamorous, but that's the only thing that comes to mind right now. And there were legends that were there. There were people that I really idolized. Now, I got to say this. Yes, I was in a force recon unit. I've never considered myself like a force recon Marine operator. I just wasn't. I went to jump school as a Marine, 2 days out of the month, 2 weeks every summer. I went through the reconnaissance indoctrination program, which was eye opening to say the least. But to say that I did the things that force recon operators do today, that just wouldn't be fair to them. So I want to make that very clear. I was a Marine on jump status. And then I wanted to, after 3 years there, I wanted to go on active duty. But then the Marine Corps told me, well, we can't guarantee that you go into a force recon unit or a recon battalion. You'd have to go through all of that again and try to, take your chances. And I was like, well, I'm not sure I want to do that. Right. So I was like, well, I'll just go into the Army and, because they can guarantee me a slot at the 82nd, they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
close enough.
yeah, close enough. Boy, was I surprised. But so I went from the Marine Corps Reserve into the active duty Army. I didn't go through all of basic training, but since the infantry is a one station unit training military occupational specialty, meaning that you go through both your basic training and your advanced individual training all at once, right? So I entered, I believe, on week 8 at Harmony Church, Fort Benning, Georgia. Didn't have to go through jump school again. So I did that and then went straight to Fort Bragg.
Got it.
And then, did my time there. Got out actually after my first enlistment.
Interesting.
Yeah, I got out. I signed up for a ministry program, which sent me to Auburn, New York, close to Syracuse. So I went there, and long story short, I taught the Bible for 6 years while working mainly in different restaurants.
Okay.
And then I got homesick, so I joined the Army Reserves, right? Joined the Army Reserve, there was a drill sergeant unit there. So I went to drill sergeant school, went in as a specialist, got promoted. I came back and worked as a reserve drill sergeant for 5 years. Made it up to staff sergeant. Got homesick again, decided I would try to go back on active duty. So I went back on active duty, took a 2 pay grade reduction to E4. So I was a
Wow.
specialist, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with a drill sergeant badge. You want to talk about getting some looks, man. But made the rank back quick, as soon as I got there, did the prerequisite for sergeant for time and grade, time and service, and then went to the board, got the points pretty quick, and then moved on to, as soon as I was eligible, they sent me to the staff sergeant board, went there, and then from there, I had, well, back up a little bit. I was deployed to Panama, met my wife, proposed to her in 3 weeks, got married like 6 months later. Um, and it's worked out for me, but don't do that. And so from there, we went to Fort Hood, or I'm sorry, not Fort Hood. We went to Fort Bragg
Hmm.
again. And from there, made staff sergeant, spent 2 years, went to jump master school, became a jump master instructor. By that time, I had made sergeant first class. And that's where you and I met at Virginia State University. So, and then from there, it was,
And your son was born.
yeah, yeah, exactly. My son was born while he was at Fort Bragg, while we were at Bragg. Um, and then, yeah, how did I miss that? And from there, we went to Virginia State, stayed there for 4 years till 2009, got stationed at Fort Hood, did everything I could not to go to Fort Hood because the Fort Bragg mentality was like Fort Hood was like purgatory. Nobody wanted to go there, right?
Right.
But I tried everything, man. I went to branch in person. Like I drove from VSU up to DC, went into that building, talked specifically to the branch manager who was like, "Yeah, congratulations. You're going to Fort Hood." And I was like, "Look, and I tried to give him like, look, got to send me to the 82nd. I've never been mech before. I don't know what I would be doing. You could get me bloody. I could go, to Afghanistan with 3rd Brigade." And all he heard was blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, all that makes perfect sense, man. Pack your bag. You're going to Hood. So I left, went to Fort Hood. It was probably, it was a great assignment once I got over the fact that I was a Met guy now.
Hmm.
But it was great. We got there. I got there in April. I was deployed by May.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Quick turnaround.
it was quick. Was there with 1st Cav, 3rd Brigade. So yeah, 3rd Battalion, 8th Infantry. It was a great time. I served as I was on the NES3 shop at first. I was an ISF coordinator, so got to work with the Iraqis a lot during that deployment. Came back, put the diamond on, and then served as the first sergeant for Bravo Company 112. We deployed, we came back, and from there I went to Fort Benning. Served as an OSET company first sergeant for 4 years, and then went to Fort Bliss, and that was actually my last duty station. So I retired from there.
Okay.
So to sum all that up, my career is kind of as an infantryman is kind of different than most. I had a lot of training time from jump master instructor, well, WLC instructor. I forgot that I also did a stitch in Korea
Hmm.
before going back to the 82nd. So I was a WLC instructor there and then came back, went to jump master school. Had some platoon sergeant time as a staff sergeant. Um, and then from there went to Virginia State. As far as training time goes, out of the over 20 years that I had served, 3 years as a jump master instructor, almost 4 years at Virginia State as a military science instructor, 4 years as a first sergeant for an infantry training company with 12 drill sergeants, and then my last 4 years as a battle staff instructor.
Hmm.
So, when you look at all of that, it really helped to groom me for the jobs that I've had once I got out.
Yeah.
And I guess that's would be my first advice to anybody who is in the military now. One, transition is not something that you are that you're going to decide on. That decision's been made for you. Whether you stay for 3 years or you stay for 33 years, it's the one job where you know you're going to leave one way or the other, voluntarily, involuntarily. It's going to end at some point.
Right. Right. We were talking about that a little bit beforehand. And we were going to talk about what was the deciding factor for you to retire. And you had mentioned that if the Army didn't say it's time for you to leave, you'd still be there today.
Yes, I would absolutely still be there today. It is, when they say it's the toughest job you'll ever love, for me, that was true in every way. And all of us have hard times in the military. All of us have hard times in the Army, times that just sucked. I don't remember those times. Honestly, I don't. Anytime I think about my service in the military, I only remember the good stuff. I know the bad stuff was there, but for some reason, I don't remember them. Um, and I know that's not true of everyone. It's just true for me. Also, I also understand that it would be delusional of me to think that I could still keep up with an infantry company at the age that I am now. So, regardless of what I want, the Army did the right thing. And I know that. So, thank you, Army, for saving me from myself.
Fair enough. So you're at Fort Bliss and you're getting ready to retire. And so now you are going through that whole transition process. What was that process for you? Did you still had to go through Soldier for Life, ACAP, and those kinds of things? And what
Yes.
was that experience like for you?
So once I started that, I realized, and I was so thankful that some things had happened long before I was forced into that process. First off, my wife insisted that I get a college education. Absolutely insisted, and I kept hemming and hawing, but finally, I um, I decided to go to school. Right, so 4 year degree, crushed it in 5, no problem. Right, so I got my bachelor's degree, and then from there went right into a master's program at while I was at Fort Bliss. So that's my first piece of advice, I guess. Actually, my second. My first piece of advice is be the best service member you can possibly be, because when you do that, it's going to do two things for you. One, it's going to unlock opportunities for you to grow more. And then two, you're going to learn all of the intangible skills that people want that they don't know that they want yet until they see you. And I'm talking about things, all of the intangibles, all of those words that we really don't know the definitions of, like leadership, adaptability, communication, resilience. Right? There are 1,000 definitions for all of those words depending on who you talk to. But you learn them all in the military if you apply yourself, if you truly decide to stretch yourself, and you're willing to put yourself in those positions and take those opportunities, you will have those opportunities. I've never known anyone that did not have the opportunity to lead, that did not have the opportunity to stretch themselves, that did not have the opportunity to communicate or to go through something hard and come out the other end. Those things are going to happen. The one variable is what the individual is going to do with them. So that's the first thing. You're going to grow, and you're going to have the skills that people want within the military, outside the military, regardless of what you do once you grow up, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to realize that every person, just like you, every person in the military is going to get out. That means every senior, every peer, every subordinate is a potential employer. When I was going through SFL TAP, the only statistic I remember is that they told us that 80% of all employees hired are hired by someone who knew them before,
Right.
right? So Think about that. If you're spending 20 years in the Army or the Marine Corps or the Navy, who knows you? But all of those people who are getting out. And that was really important for me because my first job coming out was given to me literally by the sergeant major that I worked for as the first sergeant at Fort Benning.
Wow.
Yes. Is it because I was the best first sergeant you ever seen? Probably not. But he was the director of leadership development for an oil and gas company. He needed somebody who knew how to train people, who knew how to write lesson plans, write technically. What did I do at Virginia State University for you? Right?
Lots of, yeah,
Exactly that. Nothing
exactly
more
that.
than that, honestly. I helped to develop classes, I communicated, I taught on a platform, which is all the things that he needed me to do for that company. So I put my resume together and I was hired before I even got out.
Wow.
Yeah, I was hired before I even got out. And that was because you know, he took a chance. I mean, he trusted me based on what he had seen before. And again, all of that other stuff that I talked about came into play. I did my best to apply myself. I did my best to honestly be the best person I could be while I was in uniform and to take advantages of the opportunities to learn and to grow. And in doing that, my time as a jump master instructor, my time writing curriculum at the Battle Staff NCO course at Fort Bliss, um, all of my time on the platform at VSU, all of that was exactly what I did as a leadership training coordinator for Cut Energy Services, which is the first job I got, and it paid very well, by the way. So those jobs are out there, um, and but you got to prepare yourself. You have to prepare yourself for those, and the way to do that is again to give yourself experiences, so put yourself into positions where you're going to fail, and then learn from those things, and then try again. Um, the military does that for you. If you really do apply yourself and you really try, you're going to stand out. They're going to give you responsibilities that you're just not ready for. And you're going to screw them up probably, like I did. But then they're going to give you another chance. You're going to realize that more times than not is not the end of the world. It's it's a chance for you to grow and overcome. And when you do that, your confidence builds, you know?
And your confidence.
Yes. And you're not afraid to fail. And I think that's very important too. You fail enough. You don't want to fail all the time. At some point, you got to win. At some point, you've got to produce. You have to be willing to risk failure if you are going to grow. Fail early, so that you can recover. I remember Colonel Garland used to say, make a bad decision immediately so that you have the time to recover from it, right? Better than no decision at all.
There you go. There you go. So what I'm hearing here is, um, we're starting to see a trend in these episodes, right? We're looking at, okay, what did the first job look like, or what does the first swing at civilian life, civilian employment look like? And in most cases, I will say that it is someone who you knew out of your network
Yes,
who helps
absolutely.
you get there. Now, you got this position out of Fort Bliss. So out in El Paso is where you got hired?
Actually, I got that position out of Fort Benning.
Okay.
My first sergeant was my sergeant major, Charles Room, awesome dude, by the way. And I'll hook you up with him later because he'll have lots of great advice for transitioning service members.
Fantastic. Thank you.
But he's the one who gave me that opportunity. So I got that while I was at Fort Benning. Fort Bliss was where I realized that hey, my RCP is coming up. He's
Okay.
like, all right, let's focus on your transition.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of started to utilize your network
Yes.
and get that position.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
again, it really wasn't a network. For me, it was one guy. It was my sergeant major who I had worked for, who said, "Yeah, I want you as my leadership training coordinator."
Right.
Now, just let me say this. Once I saw that and I finished my bachelor's degree, because I knew I was going into a leadership program or going to be part of running a leadership program, I decided to get a master's degree in leadership studies at UTEP.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. So, again, I was very, very fortunate because I knew long before that I had, even before I knew I was getting out, I knew that I had a place to go. And I know a lot of people don't have that. So what I want everybody to understand is that you need to set yourself up and make these things happen rather than just hoping they happen like they did for me. Life isn't fair. I was just lucky. It may not happen for you, but I want you to have the realization that you can still make it happen,
Right.
if that makes
Because
sense.
you're not there now.
No, I am
Right.
not
So
there now.
like things have changed
Yes,
since then. Just because you happen to be in the right place at the right time and knew the right guy who was able to offer you the position even way before you got out, way before you retired. You're right. Not that is a very unique situation, and that's
yes,
very appreciated because unique situations are definitely something that we need to talk about on this show. And so you are in El Paso where
yes,
you're getting ready to retire.
yes.
And where is this oil and gas company? Did you have to move out of El Paso?
The corporate headquarters is in the Woodlands, which is really just north of Houston. And so, yes, I decided to take the job and, I moved my family from there to here. So here's where I screwed up. I made I made all of you listening to me, everything that I've said, if you don't remember anything else, I want you to remember this.
This is on the test.
Yeah, please, please, please listen to your spouse. She has to have a vote. I was so focused on getting to where I needed to go, setting everything up, going to work and becoming normal, right? I wanted this transition to end. I wanted it to be just I want to go, I want to get set, I want to get a house, I want to get Abe in school, and I want to start working. That's all well and good, man. But I was taking two people with me, and I did not pay attention to that enough. You know, they're not baggage that you just, throw in the back of the car and roll in. My wife deserved a lot better than that. And I failed to deliver. Here's the other thing. While I was living my life's dream in the military, my wife was holding everything together in the hopes that once we got out, that it would be about her and not about the Army, right? The Army came before everything because the Army came before me. That's selfless service. I mean, it almost has to be that way. Maybe not, but for me, I didn't know how to do it any other way. So, whether it's a character flaw on my part or whether it was just the way life had to be, I'm still wrestling with that. But I do know that her sacrifice was not requited. We bought this house within 3 weeks of me coming here, and that didn't need to happen. We could have waited. We could have spent time. The house is nice, but it's not her dream home, and I could have given her dream home. She deserved her dream home, and I did not listen, and she deserved better than that. So listen to your spouse and understand that in my mind, where I really messed up was that the rest of my life should be about her. I didn't allow that at the beginning. And now I'm backpedaling, trying to make it right. But now it's about quality. It's about all the things, all of the dreams that she had while she was taking it for the team being me. I was living my life stream. I was doing what I wanted to do. She was taking care of Abe and everything else while I was doing that. And that was not her dream. Of course, it was part of it, but there's more to it than that. So hopefully all of that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it was especially in my situation, right? The similarity that I'm seeing is you kind of looked at, okay, we're retiring, and my purpose in life is to provide for the family, is to, move things along. And the faster I can get out of this situation and into the next situation so that that ball is still rolling, the better. But then we kind of forget that, as you said, your spouse has a vote, right? This isn't just another duty assignment anymore. This is where we could end up living for the rest of our life.
Yeah, and the truth is, she should have had the deciding. That's how I feel. And again, that's something that I'm still trying to make right. When you make a decision to do one thing, you're giving up everything else to do it. And that's what I did. But I made that decision for her, and I should.
Got it. So, valuable lesson learned,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially something that we all should take into account.
And that's all I'm saying. I mean, is life horrible? No, it's not. It's just something that I could have done much, much, much better. I'm not saying that you should take transition lightly, but if you do some basic things, you can buy yourself more time than maybe you might need. One of the things that my wife has done since we were married was she saved. And as a result, by the time we got out, we had a substantial savings and we had some passive income. So the truth is, I had time. Again, we had the resources. She made sure that we had the resources to make things happen the way she would want them to. And I didn't take that into consideration and I messed that up once again. Right? So that's another thing. Listen to your spouse, save your money. Whatever it is that you don't need, for heaven's sake, put it away. You know what I mean? That's what we did. We bought a house, we paid it off early, and now all of that passive income is ours. We rent the house out. It has grown in value. It has doubled in value since we've paid it off. Any repairs that we make, we write it off on our taxes. So that's another thing I would advise you to do. Find some passive income and then save your money. That's what she did. Anything we had over and above what I was getting every month, $150 a month I was getting for jump pay, went to another account.
Mm-hmm.
All of the combat pay, all of that stuff, hazardous duty, family separation, all of that went to another account. And because uh, we were able to do that, because she made the decision to do that, we were in a really, really great position to where I could have held out if I wanted to.
Yeah, and I think that speaks a lot, right? Because that's a specific sacrifice that not many people were willing to take. Um, you know, Especially when you're talking about, extra jump pay, the hazardous duty pay, the combat pay, while we were deployed, all that money accrues
Right.
while you're deployed. But then as soon as you get back, most people take a long vacation to somewhere expensive. I'm no different. I took an immediate trip to Hawaii for a week and spent a lot of money in Hawaii just making sure that I didn't have to stay in a chew anymore. I could stay in a very nice hotel, and I stayed at a hotel that was way above my pay grade. So I spent most of my deployment money on a trip and a new truck on my first deployment. And so, had I not done that and been able to save that, put it away somewhere, I probably would have been in a better position now versus where I'm at currently.
I think, and you bring up a great point, and something that I didn't. I like the idea that you took a vacation,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you need to take vacations. We don't. We didn't while I was in the Army. We didn't take near enough vacations. We didn't spend enough time having fun. You got to have fun, man, for them. Most jobs, and maybe even most people in the military, they look forward to Friday, right? They look forward to Friday because you got the weekend. I look forward to Monday. What
Okay.
do you think that did to my wife?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, those are the things that I should have done. And as far as, yeah, you don't want to spend all of your money on a vacation, of course, but I don't think you do. You have to just have a good time. You were in Hawaii. Did you know that there's a military resort in Hawaii?
I did.
The
And I
Halekoa.
specifically chose not to do it because,
Really?
again, I just spent a year,
Ah,
in Iraq, and I was completely like, I was militaried out at
yep.
that point,
You
right?
never would
So,
have realized. You
right.
never would have known. My I grew up in Hawaii, right? Went to high school there. Great place to grow up as long as you have a father who won't allow you to do drugs. So I never did drugs because I was more afraid of my father than I was of the effects. So, but we used to go on the weekends. We used to like put on our sunglasses and play tourist at the Halekoa. You never would have realized that you were in a military. And here's the thing, if you ever go again, and for anybody listening, it's been a long time since I've been there, but it's right on Waikiki Beach, right?
It is.
So you have all of those other resorts right there. There's nothing to keep you from going to the other restaurant and the other, you know what I mean? I taking all of the amenities that the Hanoi Hilton that the Hilton had, right,
Hmm.
or the Rainbow Hilton had. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because it was right next door. So, or if I remember that correctly.
Yeah,
So my
actually,
point is,
just as you remember, I mean, for me, that was 15 years ago when I did that, but the Halekoa definitely is in a part of Waikiki Beach where you would not know, like, oh, that's the military
right?
resort. Like,
Nope.
it's completely surrounded by all the touristy things. It's completely
Yeah,
surrounded by other resorts and other things, like, and they pay top dollar
yeah.
for those
And
specific
you,
resorts.
yeah, and you'd never know. I mean, you would
Right.
never know. And I think there are. I mean, there are all kinds of promotions. There were all kinds of promotions back then for guys that were deployed. I mean, you could have spent not as much as you did for sure, but that's it. There and with everything that we do, there's a balance to it, right? I mean, and I was never a balanced kind of guy. I was an all or nothing, all in, blinders on, full go kind of guy. That's fine if all you have to care about is yourself. But if you've got a family, you can't be like that. The blinders have to come off once in a while. They soldiers, especially career soldiers, most that I know, they're not good at that because in our line of work, everything's hot. Everything's mission critical. It doesn't matter if you've just been called up on DRF1 and you're flying to break the door down to somewhere in 18 hours or less, yeah, and you're jumping with 1,500 of your closest friends armed to the teeth to save the day, or you're picking up trash at Sicily Drop Zone. The sergeant major is going to be like, "This is mission critical." Both are the same,
Hmm.
At least that's what they make it feel like. It's not true. Nobody's going to die if you miss a piece of paper on Sicily Drop. But that's how we're taught. So when we get out, we only do what we've been doing all our lives. And so take a step back and understand that, man, stop for a minute. Smell the roses, man. Have some fun. Take some time out with for heaven's sake, go on a date night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And and that's where I failed miserably, and admittedly so. So if I had anything, here's the other thing for most soldiers, especially if you're like me, the army came easy. There were hard things, but the hard things, I knew how to do them, and it was easy to suck. It was easy to feel the pain. It was, and it was easy to talk to other soldiers. The hard stuff was, hey, what do you want for dinner when I got home? You know, helping my kid with his homework, those things. That was the hard stuff for me. That was the stuff that wasn't second nature, that wasn't comfortable. And because it wasn't second nature and it wasn't comfortable, I didn't, you know, I'd make excuses and not do them. Don't do that. Don't do that. Suck it up like you do everything else.
Yep. And as you say, we grow in discomfort.
Yeah.
So let's go back and we'll talk about your time at the oil and gas company because you're no longer there. Because that's in itself another new transition, right? So what was that whole
Yeah.
decision making process on leaving the company? And did you do something in between that and now, or did you
I slept for a week, I think.
slept for a week?
So here's how that all went down. Fed Energy Services was a great company, but it was an oil and gas company. I think in April of 2020, well, between 2019 and 2020, oil was in a steady decline. I believe in April of 2020, the price of oil per barrel was at negative $37.60, which meant it cost $37.60 to store oil. It cost more to produce it than you could actually sell it for. Well, when when what you're producing is upside down, like you can't keep everybody. There's no way. Nobody was drilling anymore. All the equipment was on mothballs. The crews were sent home, right? Well, if I have no crews that are actually out there drilling, why would they keep somebody that was training them? Most of us within that department were laid off. And I absolutely do not fault them for that. They had to do it. It would have been so stupid for them to
Yeah.
keep me. And I would never have asked them to do that because that's basically welfare, right? I mean, only it's on their dime. There's no way that they could do that. So I stayed as well, but I knew that at some point I was going to be let go, which was fine with me to a degree, right? The work was hard. It was a very good paying job, and that's another thing. If you're expected to pay well, nobody is going to pay you well to not do a very, very good job. In the military, you're going to get paid what you get paid. And whether you do a good job or not might come back to haunt you in your NCOER, your OER. But by and large, for a while, you're going to get over a little bit, or you could get over a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the civilian world. If you don't produce, somebody is going to take notice very quickly because it's going to affect their bottom line. And they are going to let you go, especially in the state of Texas, which is an at-will state. They're going to let you go and it's going to be final. So anyway, it was a hard job, and we were not only were we training people and running courses, we were also part of the recruiting department. We did veteran and military recruiting. So we were doing hiring events at the same time, and then also going to different districts where the crews were and training them on site. So there was all of this stuff that was happening at the same time. And again, a lot of it was just like I was in the military. I was going on TDY all the time,
Mm-hmm.
leaving my wife at home. So it was almost like I'd never left, right?
Right.
For her.
Right.
I loved it. But again, for her, it was hard. So I leave. And the same sergeant major who got me into CUD also runs on our Leadership Solutions, our consulting company. So one day in May, like probably 10 days after I was laid off, right?
When you
I was
finally woke
probably
up.
sleeping when he called. And he was like, "Hey, you ready to work?" And I was like, "Sure." In my head, I was going, "No." So that was the second job I had working for a production company in a small town in Willis. So I did that, and I served as an HR manager there for a while. The agreement was we would get their HR department up and running, and then once they were there, we kind of saw it as a project, and then we would, we'd go and do something else. So I was there for probably a little more than a year. I think we did really great things for them. They're flourishing now. The HR manager that we trained is now running that department, and they're doing very, very well. So that was my second job. And then once that ended, Charles went on to do other great things, but we're still running R&R Leadership Solutions. So whenever he needs me, he calls me up and says, "Hey man, I got something for you." And I'm like, "Okay." And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay.
Um, and all of that is, right now is by design. You know what I mean? So um, we've been able, Charles, because he is so good at what he does. I mean, has branched off and is working some things on his own, and he's still running R&R Leadership Solutions, and I'm still there with him. I'm not opposed to getting back into the workforce, and I probably will, depending on if there's anybody that wants to hire me and start working full time again.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to something that you had mentioned about while you were at CUD. You said you did a lot of military and veteran hiring,
Yes, we did.
right? Okay. And so you did like, you went to different locations. You say you did like some job fairs.
Yes, we did job fairs, and we focused on veterans, but we hired. When we opened up the job fair to anybody, right? So anybody who was there or anybody who wanted to come to the hiring event, we advertised it as a hiring event for all concerned.
Well, my question is, let's focus on the veteran.
Okay.
What made them successful at the job fair or at the hiring event? 'Cause I'm sure there's going to be hiring events all over the country at any
Yeah.
given time when they're watching this.
Yeah.
So, what is it that they should know going into it, seeing as you're the person on the other side? You're the person that they're going to go see. What is it that you are looking for from a veteran for you to say, yes, let's bring this person on?
Frankly, it's qualifications, right? So um, for a frac hand or an oil and gas guy at Cut Energy, we did hydraulic fracturing, coil tubing, things of that nature. And most entry level positions at CUD, those positions required a Class A CDL license. So there were some districts that would take somebody without a license, without that CDL. And then, it was one of the districts in Hobbs, New Mexico. One of the slogans was McDonald's on Friday, oil and gas on Monday. If you were going to do oil and gas, though, it was something. One, you had to have a clean drug record, right? You were going to be. In fact, we did the urinalysis right there at the site, at the hiring event. Potentially, you could be hired on the spot. And then they would start the background check that day. It would take a little while for it to come back, but not long. So one, clean record first. A CDL is good. Be in good shape if you're going to go into oil and gas, because you're going to work and you're going to work hard, and you got to be willing to do that. We had no problem hiring people. We had problem keeping people. And a lot of times it was just because of the nature of the job. There are veterans that flourished, and there were others that didn't. And really, it was really about job fit, honestly. I did recruiting as an HR guy for JFM, also for the production company. Same thing, clean record, and be willing to do the job because the job was hard, right? You were going to work at CUD, you were going to work 80 to 100 hours a week. You're going to be paid for that, pretty handsomely. I mean, you could make good money, but the work is hard, it's dirty, and sometimes it could be a little dangerous too. Or a lot of our uh, senior military guys flourished was in the safety realm. There were a lot of. I remember there were some sergeants first class uh, who had taken entry level safety positions and had done very, very well. And, for all I know, they may still be there. That's the other thing about oil and gas. When life is good, right? When oil prices are up and people are drilling, life is really good. The work is there and you're going to make money. But what goes up usually has to come down. And when that happens, then you're going to be laid off. When life is good, and you got to have, you got to have your storage for the winter, because the winter's coming and you don't know how long that season's going to be. So when things are lean, you've got to have enough to get you through. And then you will be hired again. If not for CUD, then for another oil and gas company, another hydraulic fracturing company that needs people. More experience you've got, the more money you're going to make. And you'll, if you get your CDL license, then you get your certification for double trailers and triple trailers, and you get your hazmat license. You're going, you're going to be hired. You walk in and say, "Hey, I'm hazmat certified. Come here." It's going to be like that when they need you. And there'll be other times where you walk in, "Hey, I've got all of this and I'm God's gift to the fracturing industry." And they're like, "Yeah, sorry, but we can't drill right now." So it's just, I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right. Right. So it's quite a volatile situation, but I do enjoy what you mentioned. It's not about how much you can make; it's about how much you can save,
Yes,
especially in because there's the significant ebb and flow that you were talking about, and it's not really just the oil and gas industry, and
any industry.
it is. For example, the tech industry that I'm in, right? Like if you break in at a good time, you can see that wave growing. And then when you're not even paying attention, a lot of times people are just laid off. And then you don't realize it until you're getting that phone call, which happened to me when I got that phone call and says, "Hey, we've got too many people. You need to go." And that happens. That's the tech industry in a nutshell. Oil and gas the same way, and I'm fairly certain it's really everywhere.
Restaurant industry, anything. The economy affects everything. COVID affected it. You never know what's going to happen. The airline industry. Pilots were getting laid off. You know what I mean? It's just anything you do. There's going to be fat times and lean times. And of course, how much you save will be directly proportionate to what you make, right? So there's always that you have to look at. So yeah, I mean,
So I'm curious to know about the senior NCOs and the senior leaders that you had mentioned. They went straight into safety,
yeah,
right? Because I can understand like there's some hard charging youngster who did 4-year contract, ready to get out of the military, and says, "You know what? I still got a lot of life left in me." Whereas a senior NCO or even a senior leader at any given point, their body's a little bit more broken. What would you say is that avenue of success?
speaking for oil and gas, you've got to be in really good shape no matter where you are because you're going to be walking, you're going to be in weather. Safety guys are right out there with the crew. And keep in mind that most senior guys are not like me, where you take this break and then you come back in. And when you met me, I was in my 40s. I was in the best shape of my life in my 40s, right? So when you think about that, the guy that's getting out with 20 years, if he came in at 18, he's 38 years old. You still got a whole lot of life left at 38. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's young, right? And so you've got the best of both worlds. You've got all of this experience, right? And all of this maturity. You're still healthy enough to actually do something that might be considered strenuous. And the army does that for you, I think. The army keeps you healthy, right? I submit to you that the average 37-year-old retired veteran is far healthier than civilian. I would say that, right? So when you have that, all that experience, all of that maturity, and you still got a body that can go the distance, you really got something.
Hmm.
And the guys that go into oil and gas or that go into the safety realm that I saw that were senior NCOs were like that. They were still, hard charging guys that still wanted some adventure. You know what I'm saying? People who, are a little bit older and don't necessarily want to be out in the weather 12 hours a day. Oil and gas is not for you.
Right.
I mean, that's just the gist of it.
Right. I don't mean to. I don't mean to say anything negative towards the oil and gas safety individuals. I think what it was is my bias is from the background that I have when I worked in the aviation industry. The safety guy that I had interactions with was not in the best shape.
Yeah.
was not a person who all he did was try to explain to me what an MSDS was when I could probably give him the exact same class.
Sure, because you were S3.
Right, right.
And I never took it that way. I just wanted to make sure that you realize that if you're going into the oil and gas, and there are a lot of senior guys out there that, still have the ability to do that kind of work, right? Like I know what you're talking about. One of the things that I did as a jump master instructor was I also taught hazmat and air movement operations. So we had to be DOT hazmat certified. Those instructors were the guys like you that you were talking about, the guys that were a little bit older and would not have been comfortable out there in the weather doing the things that we did. Just because I was in oil and gas at that time, those are just the people that I dealt with.
Yeah. Now you're in a consulting position. You're in a position where you're basically living an incredible life, is what I would suggest. Because you're not waking up to go do anything
Right,
for somebody else critically,
right,
outside of your family, I should say.
right.
You are enjoying your retirement, as you mentioned. And if in the event you get a phone call from R&R Leadership Solutions, then maybe you can go do it. What is the best thing about your life right now?
Just the freedom to make the decisions that I want to make. You know what I mean? And that is something that is priceless. But with everything, there's a cost. And I'm just going to say this: I don't feel fulfilled right now. In other words, I wish there were more phone calls. There's something precious about feeling useful.
Yes.
There's something very, precious, priceless, especially when you're used to that in the military, right? I mean, I remember there was one of our lieutenant colonels when I was in Fort Benning who was retiring, and he said that the one thing that he will miss is the importance of the job, the feeling that he was doing something. I understand that, whether it's just a feeling or not, whether it's true or not, you felt that way.
Right.
One size doesn't fit all when it comes to retirement or anything else, I guess. For me, there is I will be back in the workforce very soon, as soon as I find the right fit. I remember, God, what was that movie? And when the the leading lady, whoever she was, um, there's one statement she made that I kind of feel the way she did. And it was like, I'm not worried about making a lot of money. I just want to be inspired. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And I want something that allows me to look forward to Monday. I want to look forward to Monday again. I don't know, built to serve, built to feel like I'm serving, built to be useful. It's kind
Yeah.
of like a hammer that sits on a shelf. If
Yeah.
it had,
Right. Bob, I'm going to wrap it up here. Two more questions left. First question is this. During your transition process, to include even now, because you're transitioning and looking at other employment opportunities, what's one thing from your transition that you took away from that you want other people to know?
be deliberate, be deliberate, start early. Start
Okay.
as early as you can. Understand that you're going to get out. Take advantage of all of the opportunities that the military has to offer. Tuition assistance, SFL TAP, all of it, Skill Bridge, all of it. Be smart on the VA. And if you're hurting, get seen. Uh, if you're hurt, get seen. Document everything because it all matters. And don't feel guilty for taking advantage of the things that the American people have decided they want to give you. And then be thankful. Don't be entitled. Because we only deserve what the American people say we deserve at the end of the day. I will speak for myself. Nobody owes me a job. Nobody owes me anything. You know, I go to Home Depot and I buy my stuff. I put my phone number in and I have my military discount, right?
Right.
And I take it and I'm thankful. But if tomorrow I go in and I put my phone number in and there's a thing that says, sorry for the inconvenience, we no longer accept military discounts, I'm still going to buy my fertilizer at Home Depot
Right.
because they don't owe me that. I will take it and be grateful.
That's amazing. Um,
Cool.
Gratitude should be a very important part of everyone's life. Just the opportunity to say that you are grateful to the people, right?
Yes.
A lot of people that I have spoken with, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it that way. Yes, we do get a discount. And Veterans Day, you can really get every meal that you can conceive
Right.
for free
Right.
if you do it right. But also, as you mentioned, it's the American people, it's the voters, it's the taxpayers who provide us with the life that we have now.
And if they say no, it has to be okay.
Right.
I used to tell my drill sergeants whenever they work, whenever they would deal with civilians, because we had lots of civilians on Fort Benning, that we had to work with in order to get the admin requirements done for our trainees, right? Um, and I would tell them the two most powerful words in your language are please and thank you.
That's 3 words.
You, yeah. Well, one if you use a hyphen.
Got it.
Right. So yeah, 3 words: please and thank you. And um, we never had a problem as long as we used those words. It's when we didn't that we have an issue, and I think that's true now.
Um, okay, and the last question before we let you go, Bob. What's one thing that you did in the military in all of your years that you still do to this day?
Um, okay, well, still keep my hair short. I still shave every day only because, again, there are a lot of people like yourself who rock the beard, and in fact, most people I know do, and they look great. I just don't recognize myself if I don't shave every day and wear my hair this way because it's just been that way all along. There's also a part of me that, like, at least one day while I'm in, or one moment where I'm staring at myself in the mirror, I look like that one soldier that I used to be. So I can kind of con myself for just a little bit that I'm still in.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty much it. I try to adopt the attitude that I'm always learning. And that's something that I've always done while I was in the military, was try to learn something new all the time.
Hmm.
You know. So I guess those are the two things.
Great. Everyone, take a moment, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, say something nice to Bob. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. I know that for a fact. Later, lads.